Hi, we are in Hobbycraft in Crawley. I'm here with the very lovely Shimelle. We are going to be talking all things American craft and scrapbooking today. So Shimelle, welcome to Crawley. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Shimelle. I'm a scrapbooker based in London, and I also design scrapbooking products for a company called American Crafts, who you might guess are based in America, and they have lots of different brands in Papercraft and also some other things out in the wider craft world, so you may have run into them at one juncture or another. And Hobbycraft stocks two of my collections with American Crafts, one called Starshine, which has lots of star and cloud and globe themed aspirational things with lots of blue and red, and some florals and cameras too. And then the most recent collection, which is called Little by Little, which has a lighter springtime palette and lots of florals and some little animals, and then lots of other patterns on the back, and we're going to do a little bit of crafting with that today.
Excellent. So we are in store today, so it is a little bit noisy, so we're going to try and speak up and hopefully you'll hear everything that we're talking about today. So Shimelle, you're going to be doing some scrapbooking, so I will let you crack on and get started.
So with our 12 by 12 papers, and even if you work in a smaller format, if you only do like little project life cards, you're only dealing with that 4 by 6 canvas at the biggest, or you might work in cards where you're giving birthday cards and thank you cards and things like that, and you're always working on something small. Don't look past the 12 by 12 papers and think they're just for scrapbookers, because we do design them with the idea that you could use them in all sorts of different projects. So for example, this wreath paper can be used in all sorts of ways. You could cut out the boxes to make 9 different cards and then put your sentiment, or use this as an aperture. You can put a big monogram in it, or if you are making really tiny gifts like little cross-stitch pieces or keychains or jewelry, you can cut these out and use them as a presentation piece. So we're trying to make sure that just because they come on a bigger sheet doesn't mean you have to use them all at once like that. It just means that you could cut it apart and make lots of things from one piece of paper.
But what's great, I guess, is with these you have got a matching pattern on the back as well, which complements, I guess, all of this.
Yes, so our industry speak, we call this the A side and this the B side. And the B side pattern is always going to be something that's complementary, but it's going to be fewer colors and smaller in scale. And so today we're going to use the B side here with a navy with light blue polka dots, and instead of this A side as the background, but then the A side we're going to use right on top of that, so they go together nicely. And we've always designed them so that they will work well when you just take one piece of paper and mix it up like that. And also as a bonus, on the 12 by 12, you get this branding strip across the bottom, which is what's going to be used in the store to help you pay for your order at the till. But if you turn it over, we always pick a third pattern to put along that strip so that you can have just a little bit of something. Instead of that going to waste, you can use it. So we're going to use it as the embellishment on this little page.
A lot of design thought has gone into the design of these, hasn't it?
It's something that I really try to do when I'm working on our collections. I do a lot of printing it out and cutting it out and seeing how it really works, rather than just looking at the pattern on a computer screen and going, oh, well, that's pretty. I always want to know if things are going to work well when they're on your table. Okay, so to make something like this, we're going to use mostly paper and then just a little bit of other things, but mostly just paper to make a project. And if you are already a scrapbooker, you could start with this and then mount it onto a 12 by 12 page with just a little bit more around the sides, and you'd have a finished page. But we wanted to work with a smaller format today so that you can try it without feeling like you have to jump right into something big like 12 by 12. And this way, if you just want to do the one, then you can put it on your wall, you can put it on the fridge, and it's...
It would look lovely in a frame as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so it's something that's nice and simple. So this is 6 by 8 inches, and then you're going to use one photo, and if you're in a Hobbycraft store like we have here, there's a photo booth in the store. I love it. Okay, so you just need a picture of something that you want to scrapbook. It can be you, it can be somebody else, and then what I love about scrapbooking is that we don't have to follow an exact pattern. We can make decisions as we go based on what we have. So for example, in this particular pattern, I don't need to measure to have a certain point where I'm going to cut. I can just look at the pattern and say, well, I don't want to cut through any of the animals' faces. So I'm just going to choose the place where I'm going to cut based on what the pattern and the pattern design is. and I'm going to adhere that to my background. Now,
Just
sorry.
just interjecting.
No, go for it.
Again, we are in store, so there are lots of people in the background right now. So we will be speaking up, but also this project is available on the blog. So if you wanted to head over to blog.hobbycraft.co.uk, Shimelle has also provided us with step-by-steps on how to create this at home.
Okay, so one thing when I'm layering is that I never put my adhesive right on the edge of my paper. And it just makes it really easy for me to stick as I go, as I'm making things, but still have the ability to do something like this and tuck that behind. Now, I'm going to do something different with this, but the idea that I can go ahead and tuck something behind without having to pull all the layers up and it's just something that's very useful. Now, what I'm going to do is take one of the wreaths from that big piece of paper and I'm going to cut it out with my scissors. And I like to leave a little halo around the edge, which makes it much easier to cut out. Now, there are all different ways that you can do detail cutting, and if you are a champion with a craft knife and you want the really detailed look of going right to the edge of the design, by all means you can do that and knock yourself out. I am not a champion with a craft knife. You would not want to see what
What's lovely, I guess, is with leaving that border, actually, it highlights all of the details as well.
It does, and I like that, and because these are printed on color, not just plain white. I think we've got a couple there that are on white, if that's what you need. But as a whole, the sheet has lots of different color in the background, and that way you can bring that into your project. Now, that may have been the scrapbooking equivalent of watching paint dry to cut something out, but I wanted you to see just how quickly it is and the fact that I don't need to go to have any sort of special tool to do it. I use giant scissors, and a lot of people do like to use small scissors for detail cutting, and by all means you can, but the most important thing with detail cutting is that you know where your scissors are going to go. So if you have a brand new pair of teeny tiny scissors, it may well be that you don't have the right feel for them in your hand just yet. It's going to take some practice, where if you've used the same pair of scissors for 10 years, you know exactly where they're going to go. So that can be useful. Now, once I've done that cutting, I'm just going to cut this in half so that I can get 2 pieces of embellishment from one wreath. And I'll put my adhesive on here, again, not all the way to the edge, but in the middle.
I think that's a really great tip, actually. So you're not committing yourself as well. You know,
Yeah.
you can play around with it a bit. Because I think the problem I've had when I've been scrapbooking myself is I feel like I have to stick something down, because otherwise it slides around, it falls off, you can't kind of see what you're doing, and then all too often I've had to start completely from scratch again.
Yeah. And I just find that I enjoy the process if I stick things as I go. And so what I'm doing here is just stretching out that one wreath by putting part at the top and then coming down to where it would continue if this were a big oval, and putting that at the bottom. And so there's nothing there behind there. That's okay. But it means that I didn't need to use 2 whole wreaths to get that sort of look. And then from there, where I've got some sort of a balance in the middle of my page, I start to embellish, and I try to use everything in 3s, because I then know that everything's going to have a nice composition that draws your attention to whatever you choose as the focus of your page. So with scrapbooking, the focus is quite often the photo. So I want to take something in 3s and surround it in a triangle. So I have, if this is the feature of my page, the focus, it's where I want your eye to look, then I'm going to take something and put it 1, 2, 3 times, where that triangle will be around the thing that I want you to look at. Now, it might be that what you've written, if you have some really lovely journaling that you want to tell a story, then you want that inside the triangle, or it might be the title. But most of the time in scrapbooking, we tend to be led by the photos, so we tend to do our embellishment around the picture. Now, in each of these, I'm then going to put the same sorts of things, but they don't have to be identical. So I'm going to use a circle punch and my paper just to get 3 circles from the same box here. And one other nice thing is that when you're doing embellishment like this, you quite often will take the circles off the edge of the page. Mm-hmm. So I don't need the space to have 3 complete circles. And so I have, like, this one is not a complete circle because it's going to go off the edge anyway. So don't stress too much. And one more.
So what would you suggest to somebody who's starting out scrapbooking? What are the the basics that they need? Is it literally just as you said, a few sheets of paper and an idea?
Yeah, and you're going to need scissors and adhesive. I actually didn't buy a paper trimmer until I've been scrapbooking for about 5 years.
Okay, wow, that's a long time.
It was a long time, but it does change the way that your scrapbooking looks, especially if your hand is not steady. So if you try to cut a few things with scissors and you're really unhappy, go ahead and invest in the trimmer. You will not look back. But equally, if you look at the trimmer and that is a make it or break it for you, just wait, it'll be okay.
I suppose as well, if you're tight on space, a paper trimmer might not be the right thing, as you said, to start off with. And then in terms of adhesive, what sort of glue would you suggest for a beginner?
So I like glues that come in rollers because it's just so quick to go ahead and adhere.
No snipping like you would with double-sided, nothing like that.
And also you're not using something that's a wet glue that could make your papers or your photos warp. So I wouldn't use something like a glue stick. I actually started with a glue stick, and a lot of the pages they had this little warp because there's just enough moisture in a glue stick type adhesive that it doesn't go completely flat. So save yourself the heartache and go to something that is a roller, or sometimes they're called runners.
Okay.
Okay. And let's see, where can I put things? So I want to tuck one of these over here. Go to that side maybe. Just turning and turning until I decide that it's in a spot that I like. And then one at the top here, one at the bottom. And this helps me mark out the places on my page where I'm going to have the embellishment. And I do a lot of doing this sort of thing because then it's really easy for me to just turn it over.
And just snip those back.
Just take that back, yeah.
I think that's great. I think what's really nice is you don't have to do everything exactly accurate as you're sticking it down. And I think certainly there was a lot of pressure when I, first made a scrapbook. I wanted everything to look perfect, and I panicked a bit about, placing things. But I think, for a beginner, it helps you realise that you can just, play around.
Well, and one of the things that I think is lovely, that layering in scrapbooking is such a beautiful look, to just keep putting more and more layers on, even if you're not seeing a lot of them. It's a very forgiving technique. So one time I had a layout that was extremely layered, and I had it on a display where we were working with stamps. And a lady came up and she looked at this layout for the longest time. And I said, can I help you? Is everything okay? She said, I just counted and there are 17 layers in that part of the page. And I said, it's because I messed up 16 times. And I really had been. I was using this stamp and I wasn't happy with what I was getting. So every time I wasn't happy, I just put another paper on top. And eventually I got to a point where I really liked it, but I had to go through apparently 17 layers to get there. That was a bit extreme, but it does happen. Now I'm going to that branding strip now, and I'm just cutting out 3 pieces of 3 flowers, because this particular one has a floral motif.
So 3 seems like quite a prominent number.
It really is. You can sing the 3 is the magic number song while you scrapbook, and your design skills will go up immensely. And so I just put one of these with each of the circles. Bring this up. And that gives me this little grounding, so that.
And that's back in the same triangle that you've already created as well.
So once I feel like I'm allocating space on the page, and I do the same thing on a 12 by 12 as I'm doing right here, is that once I find the 3 points of the triangle, then I just add more and more to those little spots until I feel like it's all finished. Now, we also can do things like go back to this square where I cut out the wreath. Well, I cut out the wreath, but I still have the corners. So I can take those corners to triangles, and I'm just eyeballing it here, but the other thing you can do is cut one and then use it as a template if you feel like they're not coming out even. You can just trace it, in theory. So
I think that's great as well, and I guess the way you design them, you can use every last piece of this paper.
So now I can adhere that to the corners of my block here, or I can put it up, the wider corners of the page. I can just look at the design and see Where
Again,
do I
because
think?
it's double-sided, you could use that either way around, whichever
Yes.
complements
Yeah.
your design the best.
Yeah. So I've got all different spaces here, and I've got a space where I can put a photo. I've got space here where I can put writing. So a smaller space like this tends to get dates and places for me, and a larger space would then get what we call journaling, where you're going to write the story that goes along with that photo. Or this might be big enough for you to put something that feels more like a title. Or if you wanted to put a title on it, you could put a title in this space, because you could use lettering that would contrast. So I could use some big yellow letters or some big pink letters. And I could also then go back to these areas and add more embellishment. So for example, I could use something like these wooden buttons, and I would choose 3. And when we design these, I'm always this big stickler going, no, they've got to be in 3. So if I wanted to use pink, look, 1, 2, 3 in pink. If I wanted to use the blue, there's 1 blue there, 1 blue here, and I've got some blue options here if I want to go to the dark or the lighter one. I've got 3 there in black and white. So I'm always trying to make sure that you can use them in 3s, because I find that it really can help your page look just a little bit more polished. And it gives you the power to direct the eye when somebody gets it. And that's something that you can use on cards as well. If you're going to put a beautiful sentiment in the front of your card, but you've got a busy design where there's lots going on, take something and repeat it 3 times in that triangle, and it will help bring that focus in. So it sometimes feels a really silly idea that you want to add more to bring focus. You know, I'm going to add more to make it less busy. But if you add 3 things, like say I took like these little yellow stars. I've got 3 little yellow chipboard stars right there, and if I had this big design with my balloon in the middle, and I put those 3 in a triangle around, then your eye is just going to be fed into that middle part. You're just directing somebody to look at what you want them to notice. So if you've done beautiful coloring, or beautiful stamping, beautiful painting, bring their eye to it so they don't miss it.
That's great advice. So what's next?
Well, at this point, that's where we would you'd add your photo,
Yeah.
you add any writing you want to do, and you can doodle in little spots where you have any space, or if you really like small stamps, one of the things I'd love to do when I've finished a design is to then go into the little spots like this and just take one stamp and repeat it in all of those little areas. Just another thing to make it more cohesive across your design.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for watching, and thank you to Shimelle for coming along today to Crawley. If you have any questions at all, do pop some comments below, and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.